Hello to all of you. We're so glad you came our way. We hope our time with you will be a blessing and increase your understanding of the Bible. If you would like to donate and help grow this ministry, please check the options below. And folks, we will send you a free copy of our booklet, Training Your Children in the Way They Should Go. Thank you so much. And now let's enjoy some questions and answers from the Bible. Hello, folks. This is Dick and Nancy again. And we are headed into another chapter of Genesis. And if you read ahead, you kind of know where we're headed. And aren't these chapters good? I love them. What should I say, 65 years ago when I started through the Old Testament in a thorough way, I fell in love with the Old Testament because it taught me so much about God. And I think that's very important to understand God. And hey, when I became a father, that helped even more. So God cares. And we're back here to learn about Him and His plan and His working with people, because He had a plan, and it was drawn up in the design rooms of heaven, and we're living it, we're a part of it. We'll play our part, pass on for the next generations to do the same. So we're ready for Genesis chapter 26. That means we're just a trifle over half of Genesis, so we've traveled a long ways. Chapter 26, the first question: what tragedy was present in the land at this time?
Well, there was no food.
Famine. How about that? Well, here in Iowa, we live on a farm. My son lives close on a farm, and we have experienced dry years. But we have never experienced a famine. My parents lived through the 1930s. That was considered to be the worst years in this respect. But we still came through just right. Or, as a kid, I didn't know any difference. So, a famine. And you know, that has to be a tragic time. Things all dry up. They don't look good at all. And obviously, the animals you raised are dying little by little, struggling. So it's not a good time. And here again, folks, God could have kept it from being a famine. But I think you have to learn that things are not perfect for God's people. Do you know that? I mean, can you appreciate that? We need to know that and learn it and be contented, and maybe be a little like Joseph, prepare ahead of time. But anyway, famine in the land, no food. Who was alive for the first famine that we read about?
Abraham.
Abraham, he went through this. Even though he was a wealthy man, a godly man, he still experienced those things that are devastating. Folks, we are all going to experience that. And this lets me know that. And I don't know what all to say, but just get ready. Everything is not going to be peaches and cream. So on we go. Next question: because of the famine, where did Isaac go?
I went to a town called Garrett.
Garrett. Hey, that's where Abraham was back in chapter 20. So here we are again. To what king did he go?
Abimelech of Philistines.
Yeah, Abimelech. Was it the same Abimelech? Well, possibly so. I don't know how many years in this. And I think I read one time where Abimelech was a name that was used kind of like Pharaoh for more than just one.
And maybe,
But true or false, I can't tell you for sure on that.
that may be why they distinguished it, Abimelech of Philistine.
Could be.
Yeah.
Next question. As the Lord appeared, what did he tell Isaac?
Don't go to Egypt.
Don't go to Egypt. You know, folks, I think you can read it and feel it. There's some right places to be because God has a reason for all of us. And we need to bloom where we're planted by God and live a life that demonstrates His goodness. So don't go down to Egypt. Now Jesus did later, you know. There was a reason then, but not now. What was God's promise to Isaac?
Well, he told him 4 things. He said, I'm going to give you all these countries. And he says, I'm going to perform what I promised to Abraham. I'm going to multiply his seed as many as the stars. And in your seed, all nations will be blessed. So those were the promises God made to Abraham, and he was going to fulfill those.
Does God keep His promises? Yes. God had a plan, like we've said. And He's going to carry it out even though we're impatient about it. What reason did God give for blessing Isaac?
Well, because Abraham obeyed and kept what he told him, and his statutes and his commandments and his laws. That's why.
Yes. I'm going to read you verse 5. After these promises to Isaac, it says, because. In other words, Isaac, you're going to be blessed because somebody else. And I believe this principle or thought still is. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, he kept my commandments and my statutes and my laws. So God was able to pass it on and did pass it on to Isaac because his daddy did what was right. What does that tell me? My children, our children, will be blessed in some way because Dick and Nancy obeyed. And I think this is so true and so important that I just had to say this, folks. And that's why I love the Old Testament here. It actually teaches a lot of the truth that the New Testament verifies and teaches. So when you read these verses, try to drill into the richness of their thoughts and draw out what it's talking about. And you know, the same thing was said of King David, that God for years and years blessed Jerusalem and the area of Judah because of King David. Even though David did what he did, he was enough of a godly man after the heart of God that his goodness passed on for a long time. And I believe, folks, when you and I live a godly life, it doesn't stop at our cemetery. It blesses beyond that. Just a thought. Next question. Where did Isaac live then at this time?
Gerar.
Gerar, that place where Abraham had been. Now, it wasn't a place, a city of many streets and all that kind of business, but these were a nomad type of people, and they moved around some. Stayed a while, yes, but Garrett was the place for life to be lived at this time by these folks. What were the men of Garrett concerned about?
Isaac's wife.
His wife. Hey, come on. Is that all you think about? The good looks of another man's wife? Of course, they didn't know that at this time. Let's get on with the next question. What was Isaac's answer to the men of Garrett?
Well, he said, she's just my sister.
I wonder about genetics. Do they pass on the like thinking of the people behind us? I wonder sometimes. What do you think? Exactly the same thing as Daddy did. Well, anyway, something to think about. Maybe they had conversation about these things, and Isaac sat over in the corner and heard Abraham talking about this one night.
That could be.
Gave him the idea. Same situation, same conversation. Next, why did Isaac say she was his sister?
Well, because they were afraid they'd kill him and take her.
Yeah, just like Abraham. Well, at least he knew how to marry a good-looking person. But anyway, let's get on. Why would the men of Garrett desire Rebekah?
Because she was nice looking.
Very nice looking. I don't know, I did not see. But, let's admit, maybe it's all in the eye of the beholder, but we men did take a look before we said I do. But anyway, this is life. And listen, they lived life back then just like we live life today, so get acquainted with life. And that's another reason why we read Old Testament thought. What was seen by King Abimelech as he watched out his window one day?
Well, he saw Isaac playing around with his wife.
Yeah.
That made him wonder.
Now, if it's a sister, you conduct yourself one way. If it's your wife, it's a little different. And it showed up this day. And the king happened to see it. Now, we know God sees everything. And we teach our children, be careful, little children, what you do. Yes. But I'll tell you something from this lesson, and that's why I get and love Old Testament. From this lesson, you never know who's looking out the window. You never know who's just across the street, mowing the yard, passing behind the bushes, whatever they do in their trimming, and they look across the road and see what we are doing. So, a lot is seen that we have no idea. But you know, if what we do is completely pure and honest before God, we don't have to worry, do we? Anyway, such is the story. What then was the king's conclusion?
He said, I believe she's his wife.
Yeah, he was doing enough to let it be obvious that this woman is not your sister. When the king found out about Rebekah, what did he say to Isaac?
He said, why are you doing this? You could have made me really guilty.
Yeah, man. Yes, sirree. So what does this teach us?
Play fair.
Yeah. Decent. Next question. When King found out about Rebekah, well, let's see, next question. What did the king charge his people in regard to this?
He said, if anybody touches him, Isaac, or his wife, you will be put to death. Leave them alone.
Leave them alone. Now they had an obvious feeling and a conviction that you respect the fact of another man's wife. And so I wrote in my margin of my Bible, when this came out, Abimelech said, "What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might have lightly have lain with your wife, and you'd have brought guilt upon us." So you see, doing this kind of wrong thing with another man's wife brings guilt, and we need to respect that. I've tried to respect that way back when I was, and pardon me for saying this, when I was single, because I tried to honor this thought, and I always told myself, and forgive me if I shouldn't say it this way, but I always told myself, she is his property, not for you. And the Bible throughout has told us not to covet someone else's wife or whatever. So learn the lesson. These people respected it, and they had no Bible to read. There was something that had taught them this, some realization. And this is something that needs to return to our society, respecting one another. Well, anyway, here we go. How much did God bless Isaac's crops?
Oh, he blessed it 100-fold.
I almost wonder, you should have given him a short crop that first year for the way he handled his wife. But anyway, God didn't do that. What was said of Isaac's growth?
Well, the Bible says that he waxed great. He went forward and grew and became very great.
Yes, became very obvious. And I guess I would like to say here that when God's people live godly lives, we're not whiners, we're not complainers. We're just good, wholesome people, salt of the earth. When we live a happy life, a God-fearing, God-loving life, others can tell. Others will realize. Yes, indeed. So, next question. What was the attitude of the Philistines towards Isaac's many blessings?
Well, they got envious.
Yes. And, you know, that's a common reaction of people. No wonder God put these kind of thoughts in the Ten Commandments. We're not to covet. And throughout, we're not to envy. We're not to be jealous. You know, to want and to take what belongs to somebody else, you cannot be proud of that because you didn't do it yourself. We can be happy only when we do our own. But they were envious, very natural, and I suppose we all fight it to a certain degree. But I'll grant you, if you get a little older, learn a little more Bible, live like you're supposed to live, this will come easier. Godliness with contentment is great gain. What had the Philistines done to the wells of Abraham that he had dug?
They went out and filled them up with dirt.
I can't believe that. Why would you do a thing like that? Because of this envy. You know, envy will cause people to do things that they would never do under normal circumstances. Oh my gracious. So they filled in a well. Who would fill in a well? Unless you got rural water. And even then, I think I would just cap it. We did that out here. We've got a well that never goes dry. It's only 43 feet deep, and there's 3 feet of water in it, and you can pump it all night, and it never goes dry. You know what I did? I put cement all over that with a nice cement lid. I am not going to fill up a well. Water is too special and too precious. And we still use that well to the animals. So if rural water blows up, we've got water. Anyway, get on, Dick. What did King Abimelech ask Isaac to do?
He says, I want you to get out of here because you're just mightier than we are.
Oh my gracious. Of course, this is the way people think. Even though they had good convictions as far as husband and wife are concerned, this trait of envy and what have you, like I said, causes people to do things they wouldn't do otherwise. So they wanted to get rid of him. You know, the finest thing that we can do is draw around us the best people that we can find. They're going to bless us, but have the attitude of one blessing the other. Because there's enough things that we can all shine in that we don't have to be envious of each other. So Isaac departed and lived where?
He went down into the valley of Garrett.
Yeah, moved into a valley. What did Isaac do in this valley?
He redug the wells that Abraham had dug and those people had filled in.
Didn't need to witch for these wells. They'd already been proven. So dig them out again. My gracious. What names did Isaac give the wells?
The same names that Abraham had named them.
Well, that means unless they put up a sign, they had talked about this. And they didn't have television in those days, so they probably sat around at night with popcorn and what have you, and they talked about these things. Hey, can I say this? There's so much of this tinkering with the electronic phones and television and all that we don't really converse anymore. I didn't say that too loud, did I? But it's true. Why not just sit and talk about the ice cream and cake, the popcorn and the good times? Pass the fried chicken, please. What's wrong with good old-fashioned living? Anyway, here we go again. As Isaac did dig the wells, did he find water?
Sure.
Well, of course. Doesn't change. There's underground activity there. The Philistines fussed with Isaac for what purpose?
They said these wells are ours.
Well, even so, don't fill them up. Goodness. Next, what did Isaac call the place because they strove there?
Esek.
Easy. Now, I don't know what that means. Maybe if I read some far distant commentary, I'd find out. But that doesn't mean anything to me. It must have meant something to them. Special name for what was special. What happened as Isaac dug another well?
Well, they fussed again.
They fussed again. Quit your fussing over the good things. Did they strive for the next well?
No.
Finally learned something, I guess. Isaac thus called the place by what name?
Rehoboth.
Rehoboth.
That sounds better.
Well, I don't know about that. I tell you. Thus Isaac said what?
The Lord made room for us, and we are fruitful.
Yes. Maybe he was referring to both sides of this equation. And it's still true today. There's enough room for all of us. Why do we strive and fuss over things like we do? There's enough for all of us. From here, where did Isaac go?
I went on over to Beersheba.
Right up the line to Beersheba. Garrett was a little more over towards the coast, and Beersheba was more inland. When God appeared to Isaac here, what did he say?
He said, "Fear not, Isaac. I'm here with you, and I will bless you and multiply you."
Yeah, but I'd say, like in verse 20, 21 of this chapter, Isaac just kept digging, moving new wells until they got far enough away from the enemies that they stopped the scrapping. And maybe sometimes it isn't worth the fuss and the fight. Move on, dig another well, and be content there. For what purpose was God going to bless Isaac?
Well, because of his father, Abraham.
Yes. If we read that verse 24, I am the God of Abraham, thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee. And he's going to bless him. Next question. What three things did Isaac do here at Beersheba?
First off, he built an altar, he called on God, and dug a well.
Yeah. They're always digging wells. How come? Well, I think you know. Yep. Who visited Isaac up here now at Beersheba?
Oh, I can't say it.
Abimelech?
Yeah.
Abimelech. Anyway, Nancy's having a hard time tonight. Do you ever have those spells? I do. We do. What was the king's...
Up on the right. There's something.
Here, back up here. Upon their arrival, what did Isaac say?
Why'd you come seeking me? Because you hate me and you sent me out of here.
Yeah,
What's the
you kicked
purpose?
me out. You ran me off. Why do you come and want to chat now? What was the king's reply?
Well, we saw that God's blessed you and we want to make a covenant with you.
Yeah, so he finally went home and thought about it, and maybe he had a devotional back home. Maybe his wife gave him a good talking to. Anyway, they got their heads together and they put two and two together. Don't run this man off. Someone who's good in your life, you don't run them off. When people add to your life, don't run them off. It's the people who subtract from you. And even then you try to win them to Christ. But the people who surround your life are the people who are going to make your life. So stay close to the best. Why did the king want a covenant?
Well, he was afraid Isaac was going to hurt him.
Well, maybe that was more the reason than anything.
Yeah. Let's have peace.
Yeah, they want peace, and just don't want to get hurt by a guy that's coming up the ladder. What reaction of hospitality did Isaac show?
Well, just what you'd expect. He made a feast for the man.
Well, why not? I know you'd be hesitant. And maybe they departed and Isaac said, well, I'll see how this really turns out. But anyway, Isaac responded this way. Next question, at what time of day was the covenant made?
In the morning.
In the morning. Did the king finally leave in peace?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Well, he came for it. So, if we show the right kind of disposition, some of the best things are going to happen to us in life. And we need to know that. And that's why we come to church and learn the scriptures and apply them and make them a part of our lives so that the best can happen and will happen. The next, did the king finally leave in peace? Yes, I guess that's right. What news did Isaac receive the same day concerning a well?
They found water.
Found water. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised that that was really a thing to rejoice over. Now they had experienced famines, that famine. And I imagine that left an impression, just like a lot of things that happen to us in life, it leaves impressions. And you learn from those impressions. If you don't, too bad. But you learn from those impressions. And so you get ready for what isn't happening yet. And why not? What's wrong with an extra well? What's wrong with getting your house and farm paid off? Yeah. What name, as we know was more popular, came from Sheba?
Well, they named the well Sheba, but it came from the name Beersheba.
It completed that, and that name stuck. How old was Esau when he married?
40 years.
Well,
Must be popular.
yeah, that's the same as Isaac. You'd think by then a person would know better, but I don't know about Esau. How many wives did he take?
2.
What were their names?
Judith, Boshemath.
Well, we've heard of Judith, but Boshemath, that's not too common, is it? So what about the last question in this chapter? Oh my. Esau married the way that he did. Was that the way the parents wanted it to be?
Nope.
So the last question, did Isaac and Rebekah agree with the marriages?
Nope.
No. I don't know what all they did to make sure he married right, but he had a different disposition and he was going to marry, I guess, the way he wanted to. But God's way has always been that we need to marry someone who believes like we do regarding the Bible especially. And so when he did this, they were Hittite women. But they were the women who were around there. But it takes extra to make sure that you find someone who believes like your Bible believes. So think about that, and even in the New Testament, we're taught in Corinthians that we're not to be unequally yoked. So don't go against that, because marriage is so permanent. Marriage is lasting. And marriage involves you and your children. So do a lot of praying, a lot of Bible, a lot of thinking. And don't marry like Esau did, grieving the parents. I'm glad they grieved, but I'm sorry they had to. So folks, even before we get to the New Testament, we've been taught a lot of good things, how to live a New Testament life. And these kind of thoughts will help us as we learn the truth. And that truth will make us free.